One of the most heated debates of the Eagles' offseason reached the point where well-known Philadelphia voices decided it was time to respond, my friend. And the response that came out this week was more forceful than any corporate public relations speech. It was not Howie Roseman. It was not Nick Sirianni. It was a Philadelphia radio host and a franchise legend who decided to say publicly what many fans think in silence, but that almost nobody with a microphone ever says with that kind of clarity. The idea that the quarterback of this franchise has his job in danger 2 years after winning a Super Bowl is, according to these voices, one of the hardest arguments to justify that Philadelphia sports media has produced in a very long time. What John Kincade of 97.5 The Fanatic said about the quarterback's critics. What legend Seth Joyner added to the debate with words that are going to resonate among Eagles fans for months, and what the real numbers from last season reveal about where the honest line sits between demanding improvement and demanding a replacement. You are going to understand all of it right here. If you are a true Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because this debate defines the emotional and competitive state of the entire Eagles fan base right now. The 2025 season was not what anyone expected from a quarterback who 2 years earlier had been named Super Bowl MVP, who had led the same franchise to the championship with one of the most dominant performances that game had seen in years. The numbers were honest about that. 3,224 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a completion percentage of 64.8, a drop of 4 full percentage points from 2024, and on the ground, just 421 rushing yards, the lowest total since he took over as the starting quarterback in Philadelphia, snapping a 5-season consecutive streak of at least 600 rushing yards per year. That quarterback is Jalen Hurts. The critics built their argument on those numbers, and the argument found real traction in the national media because it was connected to other documented concerns. Hurts finished the 2025 season ranked 20th in the NFL in QBR and 16th in passing yards. Anonymous locker room sources described a quarterback who had become hesitant in tight windows, reluctant to push the ball downfield against zone coverage, and increasingly reliant on safe short passes and designed runs to manage games, rather than attack them. A.J. Brown's admission this week that he deliberately leaked stories to the media to create pressure on the team added a layer of context that reframed how some of those anonymous reports need to be read. And the disconnect between Hurts and his receivers, including the absence from voluntary throwing sessions and the missed wedding, became the emotional architecture of a narrative that turned a down statistical season into a question mark about the quarterback's long-term standing in Philadelphia. That is the full weight of what Kincade and Joyner decided to push back against. Kincade's words were precise and deliberate. He made clear he agrees that Hurts needs to improve on last season. That better performance is necessary, justified, and expected. But then he drew a distinction that cuts to the heart of the entire conversation. He said, "A better year? Yes, absolutely. A better year to stay here? No." And then he zoomed out to the 3-year window that the critics seemed to conveniently compress into a single disappointing season. In year 1 of that window, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and Hurts was named the most valuable player of the game. In year 3, which is 2026, nobody knows what happens yet because the season has not been played. And in the first year, which remains the most recent championship this franchise has ever won, Hurts was the best player on the field when it mattered most. Kincade's final line is the one that should end any conversation about job security. 2 of the last 4 years in the Super Bowl, we have a quarterback, and people are trying to run him out of town. That framing is important because it establishes the standard. The Eagles are not a franchise that has been searching for a legitimate starter. They are a franchise that has been to 2 Super Bowls in the Hurts era and won one of them. The idea that a single down season, in a system that was clearly underperforming, with a locker room dynamic that A.J. Brown himself now admits, was being artificially amplified by deliberate media pressure, should trigger conversations about quarterback replacement is the kind of argument that would generate laughter in 30 other NFL cities that have spent years hoping to find even a fraction of what Hurts represents. And then Seth Joyner entered the conversation. The linebacker who was one of the greatest legends this franchise ever produced, and who today has a media platform that any Philadelphia fan follows closely, used X to add what may be the most historically grounded argument in the entire debate. Joyner said this generation of Eagles fans is spoiled by the success of the Andy Reid era and by the Super Bowls of 2017, 2022, and 2024, and that this accumulated success created a collective amnesia about what is actually normal for a professional football franchise. And then he threw down the gauntlet of historical perspective. He told Eagles fans to go back to the mid-70s and work their way through to the 2000s before making comparisons. Those are decades of Eagles football where the question was never whether the starting quarterback should be replaced. The question was whether the team would ever find a legitimate starter at all. Joyner's warning was direct. Be careful what you wish for, because drafting a new quarterback is no guarantee of anything. That historical argument is the most powerful of all, because it moves the debate away from the immediate present and into the broader context of how NFL franchises actually function over time. Professional football is a sport where having a legitimate starter-caliber quarterback is the minimum condition for any real competitiveness. And having a quarterback who went to the Super Bowl as a starter, won one, and was named MVP of that game is the condition that most franchises in the league never get to experience across decades of trying. The Eagles have that quarterback right now. And part of the public conversation around the team treats that reality as if it were a liability, rather than an asset that franchise after franchise in this league would pay almost anything to possess. But there is an honest line inside all of this discussion that any balanced analysis needs to include. Joyner and Kincade are right that Hurts' job is not on the line, but the 2025 numbers are real and cannot be dismissed in the name of an emotional defense of the quarterback. The drop in completion percentage, the significant decline in the rushing game, the tendency to avoid tight windows that multiple analysts documented across the season, these are concrete data points that justify a real conversation about what Hurts needs to deliver in 2026 to confirm that last season was an atypical year and not the beginning of a downward trend. Demanding improvement is not the same as demanding replacement. And conflating the two is what generated the response from Kincade and Joyner in the first place. The contract situation adds a real financial dimension to this conversation. The Eagles could consider offering a contract extension before the current deal expires, but the organization is clearly waiting to see how Hurts performs within Mannion's new system before committing more long-term capital at a moment of genuine uncertainty about the offensive direction. If he delivers a season that confirms the problem was systemic rather than individual, that the outside zone and a new coordinator unlock the version of Hurts who was Super Bowl MVP, the extension conversation happens quickly and on favorable terms. If the same limitations from 2025 persist in a new system with a rebuilt receiver group around him, the franchise will face a more difficult and more consequential conversation in the 2027 offseason. Sean Mannion described Hurts at OTAs as a quarterback who arrives every day wanting more, who asks thought-provoking questions in scheme meetings, and who demonstrates exactly the mentality a coordinator wants to see from a starter entering a new system for the first time. That is what you expect to hear from a coach about his quarterback in June. The question is whether that mentality translates into bolder decisions on the actual field in September, October, and November, when defenses are studying film and prepared for the tendencies that defined Hurts' game last season. Words in minicamp are the beginning of the answer. The games themselves are the only answer that matters. Kincade and Joyner said what needed to be said. Hurts' job is not on the line, but the expectation for real and documented improvement is completely legitimate. And the 2026 season is going to answer that question in a way that neither the best radio argument nor the most passionate tweet from a franchise legend can anticipate or replace. Do you agree with Kincade and Joyner that the narrative of Hurts' job being in danger is exaggerated and unfair to a quarterback who won the Super Bowl 2 years ago? Or do the 2025 numbers justify a real level of concern about the long-term future of the quarterback in this franchise? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later with the latest Eagles news.